Hello guys, what is up? My name is Dylan. Welcome to the Popcorn Podcast. Welcome back, of course, if you have been tuning into the videos recently. I hope everyone is doing eternally fantastic. That didn't really make sense, but we're gonna roll with it anyways. So I'm sure, like many of you have, and many of you will, I saw Eternals a couple of days ago, and it is, of course, the latest entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So without further ado, let's get talking about it. The Eternals are a race of immortal beings, each with superhuman godlike abilities, who have secretly been living on Earth for thousands of years. In the present day, they find themselves divided across the world, but when mankind's most ancient enemy, the Deviants, returns stronger than ever before, the Eternals must find each other, reunite and join forces once again to stop this devastating threat. Okay, so to be completely honest with you guys, Eternals is a bit of a mess. It is for sure one of the most ambitious projects that Marvel has ever done. But unfortunately, it does come across as a case of biting more off than one can chew. I just want to firstly make clear, guys, that I did not hate Eternals. I think that despite all of its flaws, I am actually a little more on the positive than the negative side of things. And I don't think that this is the worst film in the MCU, like a lot of people seem to be saying. But at the same time, I don't think it's anywhere near the best. And I actually thought it should have been. You know, this film had so much potential. But yeah, anyways, before we get on to that stuff, I do want to talk about what I actually enjoyed about the film. I think the number one aspect for me is purely the fact that Eternals is something different. You know, it is something we have never seen before in the MCU. The film introduces new characters, new lore, new sort of cosmic world building. And I think that despite the abundance of issues that the film suffers from, all these new aspects do indeed make Eternals feel somewhat refreshing. And as a fan of the MCU, as a hardcore fan of the MCU, like I'm sure many of you are, I appreciated that. You know, I appreciated the fact that this time around they took a risk to give us something new and something fresh. Some characters I did like a little more than others, but I'd say on a whole the entire cast do really turn in some solid performances. I'm not going to go and name, you know, all the actors and all the characters because there are so many of them. But I'd say if I had to choose a favourite, it would probably have to be Barry Keoghan, who played Droog. He's this Eternal who can, you know, control minds. And I think one aspect of this character that was sort of really interesting was the fact that he's a bit of an oddball in the group. You know, he's constantly questioning the decisions being made and sort of the Eternals' purpose on Earth. And I think just overall, he really sold the dramatic elements of this film quite well. In fact, I think my favorite part of this film is this whole segment that takes place in the Amazon rainforest, where the Eternals have to go and find Droog, and there is conflict, there is action, there's quite a bit of everything actually. I also really loved the opening sequence of the film where the Eternals first establish contact with humans. They sort of come down and save this community of people from a bunch of deviants, and just from an action perspective I think it was great. You know, it showcased the sort of dynamics between the group and the powers that each of them have. And it was also the first time we get to hear the Eternals theme. And speaking of which, Ramin Djawadi's score I liked quite a lot as well. You know, he is personally one of my favourite composers, and a lot of you might have actually forgotten this, but his sort of involvement with the MCU dates all the way back to the very first Iron Man film. You know, of course he did the music for that film as well. So to see him return and do the score for Eternals was great, and I hope that, you know, they keep him around for future installments of, you know, the Eternals. To really establish that musical continuity that I know the franchise has lacked before in the past. Right, so moving away towards the more controversial / not so positives, the film is directed by Chloe Zhao. And once it was announced that she was going to be taking on the Eternals, I was at the very least intrigued to see what she'd do. You know, she's a really, really talented filmmaker, there is no doubt about that. Of course, she won the Best Picture and Best Director awards at this year's Oscars for Nomadland, which was a film that I thought was great. As you watch Eternals, you can sort of see those trademark directing features that she sort of brings to this project, those real earthy visual tones and those beautiful golden sunsets, along with a real focus on sort of human emotion, despite this film being very much about, you know, godlike characters. But I really think that this film would have benefited from a director like Chloe Zhao if it wasn't so huge and so ambitious and trying to do so many different things. There is so much information, so many different characters, so many different arcs, so many different plot lines that this film throws at you, some of which stay the same, some of which change, some of which are introduced early on, some of which are completely forgotten about. There is a lot to take in, and I feel like the writing is really, really clunky, you know, it really lacks a natural progression of events. So many scenes feel like they're almost leading up to massive exposition dumps, and I think that even though Chloe Zhao does her best to really try and get you to care for these characters, because there's so many of them, they felt more like pieces on a chessboard. I like Gemma Chan and Richard Madden as actors. I think they delivered really solid performances here, but I gotta be completely honest guys, I did not buy into their romantic relationship. I thought that they lacked chemistry together, and that's really surprising because they're really good friends in real life. Actually, now coming to think about it, that's probably why they didn't sell the romance for me. The comedy in this film is fine. It is what you'd expect from an MCU film, and it did get quite a few laughs out of me, I'll admit, but I think the film overall is just let down by the script, and particularly in the third act, I did enjoy the action and I did enjoy the spectacle, but I just wasn't emotionally invested as much as I think the film wanted me to be. On a whole, looking back at Eternals as a film, I am a little disappointed because I think that it genuinely had the potential to be not just good, but one of the best entries in the MCU, you know, and I appreciate the fact that this time around they're going for something different, and I'm all for that going forward with Phase 4. And as much as I did enjoy some aspects of the film, a lot of things for me just didn't work out. So overall, I'm gonna give Eternals a C+. So that is it guys, those are some of my overall thoughts on Marvel's Eternals. Let me know of course what you did think of the film down below in the comment section, whether or not you really liked it, or you know, you were disappointed by it. Let me know, and of course if you did enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. As always guys, thank you so much for checking out the video, and I'll catch you very soon in the next.